Hi, you guys. My name is Sharon Warshawn. I am a fragrance consultant partnered with Scentsy Fragrance to help women create cozy homes and income that supports the life that we're growing into. Today, we're going to do something just slightly different. Instead of talking about Scentsy products and fragrance products and how we can make your home cozy, we're actually going to talk a little bit on a coaching point, a little bit of coaching to do that other thing, which is to help women find income. There's that. Okay, so today we want to hit on some of what I think of as terrible advice, like awful advice. Like every time I hear this advice, it gives me anxiety. And in talking with other consultants, it gives them a little bit of anxiety too. And that advice is just be yourself. Or if you want to take it just a step farther, just be your authentic self. And to be very honest, we get this advice a lot because it is the cornerstone of something called attraction marketing. And it's this idea that if you are just yourself out in social media land, you'll attract the people, or the people who are most like you and who most appreciate you are going to find you and engage with you and become friends with you and maybe eventually customers with you. And that all sounds well and good if you know, number one, and if number two, you are comfortable being your authentic self out on social media. And as women who tend to go through different life transitions very differently, than I don't know, than the textbooks say that we should. What happens is when we transition from one point in our life to another, we lose a little bit of our identity. And by losing a little bit of our identity, when somebody says, just be yourself. That is very, very hard to articulate and translate and then to put out on social media. Super simple examples, like you go from being married to not married, or the other way around, not married to married. You go from having no children to having one child, going all the way up through like having children at home to being an empty nester. When your identity is married to the roles, there I am with married again, connected deeply to the roles that you play in your life, when somebody says, be your authentic self, that can be very, very hard. A second thing is quite simply, we just don't want to put all of our lives out on social media. There's sort of like this privacy veil that not only are most of us comfortable or want to put up, maybe you should put up, right? Because the internet is not the place where you should be living your most authentic life completely out loud, because honestly, it's just not everyone's business. And secondly, you're entitled to a little bit of privacy, right? So today I want to go over with you something that in coaching I've developed with my team to help identify that magical, like, be yourself or be your most authentic self without causing overdue or undone anxiety, without causing a lot of anxiety. That's where I'm trying to go with that. You see how authentic this is? I get tripped over my words all the time. It's true. It happens. I'm nervous talking about being my authentic self. It's probably making me my most authentic self. I'm sure we'll get into that in therapy later. Okay, so we're going to do something that I lovingly call the energy audit. And this is kind of looking at who you are day to day in both what you're doing in terms of your activities, what's taking up your mental space, and how you're already showing up in social media, and how you can turn that into 3 to 5, what they lovingly call content pillars, that you share about yourself day to day out on social media to find your tribe. So why being authentic feels so uncomfortable is because normally when somebody says show up as your real self, what you sort of actually hear, like what you internalize, is be vulnerable before you're ready, or be confident before you feel clear, or be visible before you feel safe, or you might really fully not have developed a certain identity. So when somebody says, I don't know who I am, that's not really a failure, that's an honesty, right? And we love honesty right here, like open and authentic honesty. If we can't talk about it, we can't change it, right? So instead of be authentic, maybe the better sense of what we should be talking about, and the way to frame it, instead of saying be your authentic self, you're going to say be honest about where you are. I'm going to say that again. Be honest about where you are, because no one is going to ever ask you to be anyone other than who you are. And what we're talking about today is figuring out ways to articulate that into a social selling business and therefore being on social media. Authenticity isn't exactly a personality, it's just an alignment with who you are in the season. It's not forever, it's just who you are today. For example, again, going back to childhood, because I do think that it's the simplest like illustration to make. Your child will not always be 3 years old. At some point, your child, God willing, will be 30 years old. And those are two very different times of life, right? It's so normal. It's so normal. So we're going to start first with the time, the amount. I hope you grabbed a pen and paper. I should have warned you a long time ago that you should have grabbed pen and paper. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to write down the 3 to 5 things that took up the most of your time this week. These are the things that physically required you to do something. So we're talking about work. We're talking about things to do with the kids, errands. Scrolling is actually something considered to be like physically active. Socializing, content creating for social strategies, social sellers, rest, meal planning, etc. What are the 3 to 5 things that took up your time for this week? And once you have those down, we're going to ask ourselves 2 questions about those things. Which of these felt easy or natural? And which of these felt heavy or draining? Now, you can probably see right off the bat that, by categorizing things that felt easy or natural of things that felt heavy or draining, those are different categories of ways that you can show up on social media. We'll get to that in a second. Now, this one's just kind of a little bit quirky. This came from conversations with other people. What kinds of things do you collect? Or what are your hobbies? And when I say what kinds of things do you collect, I mean, I'm not saying that every single person on this planet is a collector, but I'm curious. Like, do you have a mug collection? Do you collect elephants? Do you have stamp collection? Do you collect coins? Are there any things out there that you collect? Or what are your hobbies? Do you go axe throwing every weekend? Are you on a bowling league? Um, do you enjoy being a part of the dog park? Is it someplace that you go every day or every week? Like, what are your hobbies? And then what would people say are quirky or fun about you? Now this is something that like, okay, so for example, like I know somebody, her business is her hobby is she does metalworking. And it's just the most fascinating thing. I have never met anyone, I don't think, much less a woman who is a welder who makes things out of different like spoons and gears and whatnot. And I find that fascinating. I really, truly do. So that is something that is authentically about who she is as a person. Another question: what are people most likely to associate with you? Or do you have a dark sense of humor? Are you a dog mom? I brought this up again. Do you drink exclusively out of Stanley's? Now, this is one that you could actually ask people on social media, which could be an interesting engagement post outside of being a mom, outside of being a dog mom, maybe for me, outside of being a fragrance consultant. What do you associate with me? And that is just an indication of how you show up out in the real world authentically without the filter of social media. So now remember, this is an energy audit, and we're saying those are all kind of physical things. So now moving on to mental space. Okay. What occupied your mind the most this week? What were 3 to 5 things that you spent the most time thinking about this week? These are the things that are required your thoughts or brain power. We're talking about planning events. Maybe it's money problems. No shame in it. If you can't talk about it, you can't change it. Maybe you had some big ideas for work. Maybe you like to journal. Maybe you are someone who sits down and sets goals day after day. Maybe you're a reader. I know lots of readers and I love them because I know their brains are just like sparkly. Um, which thoughts felt energizing or exciting, and which thoughts kept looping back and causing stress? So again, it's kind of sort of like the physical things, like what things were positive overall and what things might have been negative overall. And we're not passing any judgment on these things well, I guess you're passing a little bit of judgment. We're not passing judgment on these things existing, and we're not passing judgment on which category they fall into, because this is about you figuring out who you are and the things about you in this moment, right? So if you had money problems, that's fine. Would you say that it was a negative thing? Yeah, probably. If you are reading, trick question, was it negative or positive? Because while I like sparkly brain readers, I also know readers who use reading as a form of escapism. Isn't that interesting? It's like who you are in this moment, right? Okay, moving on. Hold on just a second. There's my notes. Let's see. And then I've got another little bit of a values thing in here. So if you'd like, just go ahead and request a copy of this worksheet down in the comments, and I will send it to you. And then, of course, the emotional energy. So we've got mental energy, physical energy, and now your emotional energy. When did you feel most like yourself this week? What thing was going on this week when you felt most like yourself? When did you feel the most off, forced, or disconnected with your emotional energy? And that's all we're going to say about that for right now. And then we're going to move on to social media cues. I find this one so fascinating. So, what things did you naturally want to post about this week, even if you didn't? What thing popped into your brain and you were like, oh, I have something to say about that, but you let some other outside force or some thoughts about that keep you from posting it? What content felt hard, forced, or draining to think about? What content did you reshare from other creators, and how come? This is another thing that I find fascinating when I go to someone's social media page to learn a little bit more about them, and all I see are reposts. I mean, maybe I'm filtered. That's fine. That's their prerogative. But I wonder, if I'm not filtered, then where's their own original content? Why are they resharing content from other creators? I find that fascinating. Okay, so we've asked a ton of questions about what took your mental time, your physical time, your emotional time. And then we did a very quick social media audit. So hopefully by now, there are just a few things that stand it out to you. Like which of the things above could easily turn into a post, a story, a conversation, and then, of course, there's the reshare content that you did. If you could make your own content about something that you reshared, what would that be? So let me give you a few examples that have come up in coaching with my friends, with my other consultants. I have a friend who has a massive mug collection of Starbucks mugs. Everywhere she goes and she has friends go, she collects a mug from that location. So, in having a conversation with her, she could, in theory, write a post about the mugs once a week. And that could be a content pillar, one of the 3 to 5 things that she consistently posts about on her social media to draw like minded people. Because if she's writing about her mugs, and we're talking about not just look at my mug, this one's from Wyoming, but like this is the Wyoming mug, and then share the story about it, that creates things for her to talk about that isn't just her social selling business, that are authentically her, is her in this moment, that she could share, that she could talk about, right? I have oh, sorry. I just started thinking. I've started thinking. My brain just started exploding, right? Then there's also the subject of, say, like somebody who's raised 2 kids in Boy Scouts, both a boy and a girl, who is, their children have now left home, but they're still at their heart and soul a Boy Scout leader. They do those things. So you can turn the idea of being a Boy Scout into separate individual posts, not just memory making posts, like things that you did in the past, but things that you're doing now that are a part of the lineage, the heritage, the values that you learned while you're a Boy Scout person, the things that you do today and the things that you do in the future. That could be something that somebody talked about week in and week out as one of the 3 to 5 content pillars of their lives that will draw like-minded people to them. Does that make sense? Because this is a very clear example. I was not raised in Boy Scouts. I am not an outdoorsy person. And while I love my Boy Scout friend to death, if she starts talking to me about building fires and sticks with the backyard, I'm going to just be like, yeah, I'm going to go get a match and light the fireplace on the inside, because we are not like minded people when it comes to those things. Another super simple example, somebody who is a sports team fan, rather than resharing posts from the sports team over and over again, creating your own posts about the sports team, their performance, and whatever you can think of to talk about when it comes to the sports team. Because then you're pulling in that like-minded person. Maybe it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe it's the New York Yankees, whatever. Instead of resharing that information, creating your own content around those things. And then, of course, you've got your 3 to 5 posts. So at least one of those needs to be your social selling post. In your social selling posts, again, doing your best to not share sales posts as much as you share stories posts, like all the other posts we've been talking about, sharing stories about our mugs, stories about our life as a Boy Scout leader, stories about our sports team, stories about our social selling business. And look, all of that, I've got 4 content pillars, right? So now hopefully while you were doing your audit, you found some reoccurring themes that could be about who you are right now in order to build your most authentic self online in your social media, and while also reserving some of the privacy and helping you feel like you have something to share, building your confidence up just a little bit, strip away a little bit of that anxiety, understanding that you do have something to share. Okay. I think you're amazing. I think you're great. I think that the content audit will help you bring up 2 to 3 things, your social selling business being your 4th thing, to talk about consistently in a way that is authentic to you without you just being yourself, and instead talking about who you are in this moment. Now, keep in mind, and I do feel like I need to put a disclaimer here right on the end as I'm closing out because I'm talking for a long time. There might be things that while you are doing your audit, your emotional stuff, your mental stuff, your physical stuff, there might be some pain points in there. There could be. It could be maybe some depression. There could be like some other mental health issues. There could be some things that maybe bring up shame, or things that maybe you think you're the only person that goes through that one thing. And my bit of advice on that to you is, of course, all things first, your comfort and your safety. If it's not something you want to talk about, that's totally fine. But if you do decide that it's something that you want to talk about, there's a good chance that somebody out there will be able to relate to what you have to say. And if, as somebody else expressed to me, you're uncomfortable with attracting pity, or this whole like, I have to support her now because she's going through this thing, I encourage you to approach whatever subject comes up from a place of curiosity, from a place of, I have had this experience. Has anyone else? How did you approach it? How did you handle it? And you really might find that there's a whole other world of people out there who are similar to you, like-minded to you, and are there for you. But you got to show up as your authentic self first, okay? All right. Have an amazing rest of the day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.